from when he can stand up to the world and do what these guys have done, which is put out, here's where we are, here's what we know, here's where we think we're going to go, kind of thing. And then let the chips fall where they may and let the critics come out and try to pick it apart, which, that's what they'll do because that's their job. That's what a critic or a skeptic is all about. They have to look, pick around the edges and hope that they can find a crack.
Thousands of new people coming on board every week, Lloyd. They're probably saying, okay, what's the Starchild Skull? Go ahead.
Well, the Starchild Skull is a real, true bone skull that was found in Mexico in about 1930 and by a girl, and she just assumed, as anybody would in 1930, that it was a deformity. And so she kept it her whole life. When she died, she passed it to some people. They kept it 5 years and passed it to another couple in El Paso, Ray and Melanie Young. And Melanie had been a neonatal nurse, and she knew immediately it wasn't a deformity. And she and her husband were members of El Paso MUFON, so they knew a lot about UFOs and aliens. And they looked at it and felt that it was a skull that could go in the head of a gray very easily based on the many descriptions of gray aliens. So she thought it could well be a gray. She showed it to me, and I was really very skeptical at first, and back in 1999, February of 99, and so I needed all of 99 to convince myself that this probably was the real deal. So I started to believe that it probably was an alien as well, and I believed that until we got the DNA test in 2003 that showed that the mother was indeed human, but the father wasn't. And then the trick became what it's been since 2003, which is find a way to test the DNA that will prove what we knew to be the case. And we have that now, and it's really just pretty much a matter of putting one foot in front of the other, get the money situation squared away, which we're now working very hard to do, and then glory hallelujah, we hit a home run. It's really going to make history. It truly is.
Well, Lloyd, nobody's worked harder at this than you. Gosh.
It's been 11 years. We've been doing this for a long time, you and I, haven't we?
Yeah, we really have. And
yeah.
I mean, I could just imagine one day when you're vindicated, and it seems like it's going that way, doesn't it?
It really does. I don't I don't want to gloat, but you can't help but gloat a little bit. This is but see, the thing is, I've known it for a very long time. I knew it in 2003 when those guys showed me the results in 2003. I knew it, and they told me, we know it too, but we can't prove it yet. But if you wait 3 to 5 years, now I'd already waited about 5 years, but they said if you wait 3 to 5 more years, you will be able to prove this, because there's new technology coming along that is going to give you what we can't give you now. And sure enough, that technology is there, and the price, while still egregious for our world, a couple $100,000, is really chicken feed to a lot of people, and just, got to get connected with those kind of people. And like I said earlier, we're working on that very hard, and it's a whole different ballgame, George. We're selling history now. We're giving people the opportunity to get in on making history of a kind that'll just never be forgotten. So it's a very different project than it was trying to convince people to put money into something that was to everyone's way of thinking iffy. And I would hear this all the time, well, if what you're saying is true and legitimate, why hasn't it been on the news? Why hasn't science announced it? Why doesn't everybody know? And this is going to allow that to happen. That's the great advantage of what we've done here.
Now, have there been any other discoveries of Starchild-like skulls throughout the country, throughout the world?
Well, not like the Starchild. It's unique as far as I know, and I get probably every weird skull out there. People send me pictures, and I've never seen anything like the Starchild. But as I always say, the coneheads of Peru, in my opinion, have a chance to prove out to be, in their own way, every bit as weird as I'm sure the Starchild is going to prove out to be. But I don't think the coneheads are entirely human either. They have those brains that are absolutely twice the size of ours, and so I've always felt, even though they have human-like faces,
right,
those brains are not human. They're not even in the ballpark of human. So those creatures, whatever they were, they're not entirely human. But I've been saying literally from the beginning, for 11 years now, I've been saying somebody ought to test the cone heads, and so far as I know, nobody ever has. But if I do okay with this, got a little money in the pocket, that's one of the things I want to get on is find out about the cone heads. I'm confident it'll be the same story with them.
Well, absolutely. But, I agree with you. I don't think you can elongate a skull and then have a big brain at the same time. That just doesn't happen.
Well, you can reshape a human skull, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, there's plenty of examples of that. Reshaping of a human skull is common in some cultures. But exactly what you say, you can't, in that process, double the brain. You just reshape the head you have, but you don't double the brain. You look at those conehead skulls, they're holding from 2,800 to 3,000 cubic centimeters of brain. You and we're holding about 1,400 cubic centimeters of brain. Big difference. So coneheads, yes, everybody, it's like watch this space. Watch the Starchild, watch the coneheads. Things are going to happen.
Things are going to happen. How do people get a hold of you, Lloyd? Website?
Website is www.starchildproject.com, starchildproject.com. And they can find out, most if they've not heard of it, they can read up on it there. Of course, obviously, we have a book about it. We have an ebook available. I have a newsletter that people can sign up for if they want to keep in regular contact. I send messages out there 2 or 3 times a week. So if you want to keep up, get on the mailing list, and amazing things are going to happen.
Absolutely. Well, stay with us, Lloyd, because we're going to take some phone calls for the remaining half hour with you. Here's an opportunity to talk with Lloyd Pye about everything you know is wrong, including the Starchild Skull. How often have you looked into the heavens and wondered, where in the heck do I fit in with all of this? That's what we're going to talk about with Dr. Lori-Ann Levin when we come back on Coast to Coast AM at the top of the hour. But next, it's your phone calls with Lloyd Pye as we talk about the Starchild Skull on Coast to Coast AM. Lloyd, do you hear any more stories about the elusive Bigfoot or Sasquatch? Anything new there?
I'm sorry, say again?
Any more updates on Bigfoot or Sasquatch? Do you hear anything else?
Well, there are the usual things going on. There's what I hear anyway is talk about trying to use various devices for hanging over their territories, hanging above their territories silently or near silently, and trying to track them that way. Using infrared cameras, they're out at night, and which I think is, I think those are good ideas. But as with everything, it's the money involved. But some of those ideas are the best I've heard about how to do it so that you plan it out instead of just an accident and everybody panics and nothing is coordinated and it doesn't get done. But if you do it right, I think you can have a planned encounter. You can maybe even have a tagging, but you don't have to kill it, but you can prove it's there. You can learn a lot. So I'm for that, and I hope that somebody manages to put that together.
Okay, to the phones we go. We'll pick it up first of all. Dave in New Jersey, first-time caller. Hey, Dave, go ahead.
Lloyd, I love your work. I really appreciate what you've done. It's been really inspiring for me. And my question has to do with the work, the research you did on Sitchin's work and the Anunnaki and Sumerians. And I just saw this new movie that just came out called The Fourth Kind, and was very, very surprised that they actually mentioned Sumerians and a lot of the details about it. And I was wondering, it's such a huge paradigm-blowing thing, and you don't hear about it anywhere. Do you see any evidence that this might start to come out more, or more discoveries on it, or anything like that?
Well, I do, and I hate to move it away from Sitchin and all the wonderful work that he's done, and that movie, which I haven't seen, but I've heard good things about it. People have written me emails saying that they've really enjoyed it. But really, from my point of view, from my perspective, if the wedge is going to be the Starchild Skull, you have to get the other side to acknowledge that you're in the game, or you're just talking to yourself. You're preaching to the choir. And essentially that's what we do now. Now, George preaches to the biggest choir out there every night, so it isn't that it's ineffective to do that. But to get into the mainstream, you need a wedge that changes the thinking of not only mainstream science, but